All right, 7 o'clock. So for those who are here, I don't want to punish those for being on time. So I want to just start off by saying good evening. Thanks for joining us this fall evening of postseason baseball and taking the time to be here. For those I have not yet had the pleasure to meet, my name is Jason Sabino, and I'm the Director of School Counseling at Watchung Hills Regional High School. I'm thrilled to be here with you to talk with Mr. Doug Wilson. He is a Director of Financial Aid at Kane University. And this evening, he is also presenting and representing the Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. But a few things before that, just 2 short weeks ago, we had our post-secondary planning night for our class of 2026 parents and students. If you were fortunate to be there or able to be there, hopefully you found that to be valuable and educational for your senior. I'm also aware there may also be some underclassmen, parents, and students on this call. Definitely valuable information. If you hear it once, you hear it twice. Definitely good information to hear and kind of getting familiar with the financial aid process. The presentation from post-secondary planning night is also already available and posted on our Watchung Hills Regional High School website under the counseling link. So please take a chance to take a look at that. Or if you were there and you just want to look at a couple of the resources that were shared, you can just go right there and pull up all the resources. We often help support in the role of school counseling, the wide range of aspects of navigating the college application process from interest to acceptance. So we are happy to be able to provide this presentation in that series. I am the director here representing the school counselors, but I can tell you there's a number of them on the call tonight who are also here to continue to be a support for you. We learned tonight about some updates from Doug and also be a support for you throughout the process, and when needed to link you with individuals like Doug and other individuals at the college level to help you with questions you may have, depending on the schools you may be considering for your child. Doug has a lot of knowledge. He was on the call with us last year, and we were fortunate to have him last year about the college application process, including who should apply for financial aid. Quick tip is mostly everyone. Speak to you about the release of the FAFSA, which he told me is actually open early this year, which is a surprise compared to last year. And also to talk a little bit about any of the takeaways he has from the experience with the revisions from last year and any other knowledge worth sharing. It's also important to note that this year is the second year that the state of New Jersey has the requirement for class of 2026 to complete the FAFSA or a waiver for any student graduating from a public school in New Jersey. So we'll send more information out about that in a separate letter, but I just thought, while I have your attention, I would share that information with you. Each year I pick up more tips on this process, so I'm looking forward to hearing from Doug myself. So I'm quickly going to wrap up with just a few things on housekeeping. Just getting more familiar with Microsoft Teams. There is a question and answer feature on here, so there may be opportunity for you to post questions and answers. And if time allows towards the end here, I'll try to throw them over to Doug and see if he can help us answer those. Otherwise, again, of course, we'll have his contact information and we can follow up with you individually through the counseling offices. And again, this webinar will be recorded and posted online on the counseling portion of the website for later viewing and review. So as much as you want to take in notes, feel free to also just take in what Doug has to share, and you can always reference a portion of this presentation in the future. And I think without further ado, I want to welcome you, Doug, again, and thanks for joining us again this year.
Okay, thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening, parents and students. Oops, I have to make sure the mute button is off. I've made that mistake often in the past 5 years, but it's a pleasure to be here. This is a very exciting time for you students. You're about to enter the next phase in your life. So in addition to all the activities that Mr. Sabino mentioned, we want to spend a few minutes, or actually the better part of an hour, discussing how to finance your education. The good news is, for many of you students who may not be aware of this, your parents may have started a nest egg or a college savings plan when you were born or adopted, so that's very helpful. Also helpful are programs from the federal government, state government, in some cases within your own community, and the colleges and universities to help you defray the cost of your educational expenses. Now, this Presentation will be broken down to three basic parts. The first part will concentrate on programs available at the federal level and the state level. Second, give you a brief description of the application process, which for most of you will be the FAFSA. Then I'll conclude with a few things that you, the students, and even parents need to know after you complete the FAFSA and what questions to ask when you apply for college or receive those aid offers. This session is brought to you by HESA, the New Jersey Higher Education Student Assistance Authority, which has been around since before most of us were even born. And their purpose is to provide families with financial and informational resources to help you pursue education beyond high school, which can include, not limited to, colleges, universities, technical, trade, or vocational schools, because they participate in financial aid programs. Mr. Sabino actually stole my thunder a few minutes ago, but that's fine. But just to reiterate, completing the FAFSA, for the most part, is a requirement for graduation from New Jersey high schools. New Jersey joins a number of schools across the nation, which makes this a requirement in order for you to receive your diploma. Many of you who will be attending college were planning to complete the FAFSA anyway, but for anyone who thought college was unreachable because there's no way that you could afford it or your parents could afford it, may be surprised by the estimated assistance that you may receive. And as long as you apply early and plan ahead, education beyond high school is not outside of your reach, or should not be outside of your reach. My day job, as you heard, is at a specific university, Kane, but during night I work with HESA along with other aid administrators throughout the state to provide FAFSA workshops and financial aid presentations such as this one. So regarding my day job, financial aid administrators are not unique to Kane or any other school in New Jersey. At just about any college or university you apply for, there'll be individuals, it could be a couple, could be a few dozen, whose main purpose is to help families apply for these funds and administer all these federal, state, and institutional programs. If you have the opportunity to attend an open house event at a university, if you're still in the exploratory stage, a lot of times there'll be a panel or a standalone presentation regarding financial aid, because the aid administrator will be speaking about the process and awards that are available specifically at their institution. Tonight, we're just going to provide you with some general information, which applies to just about every college or university. But for more specifics for that college you're thinking of attending, if you have any questions, your best resource would be that college's financial aid or even the admissions office. As I alluded to before, financial aid can come from the federal government, state governments, also from the colleges and universities themselves, and perhaps within your own community. Parents or students, for example, if you're part of a civic organization or a church which offers some sort of scholarship program, whether it be a couple hundred or a few $1,000s, every little bit helps. You should look into those opportunities. The biggest source would be from the federal government. I'll spend a great deal of time talking about the FAFSA and some of the federal programs that are available to students attending at participating institutions. Financial aid can be broken down into two areas. One is called gift aid, and the other would be self-help. Gift aid is, by definition, is a gift that does not have to be repaid. And that can be broken down further into two subcategories. One will be grants, which are awarded based upon need or the family's ability to pay, and that's based on the information that you complete on the FAFSA, and which is analyzed by the federal government and the state government based upon their different formulas. And based upon your family's resources, the state or federal government will supplement that with their available resources. Similar to grants, scholarships do not have to be repaid. Those are awarded typically based upon merit. Merit meaning your academic performance, how you fared in high school. and what your potential is going into college. Scholarships can also be awarded based upon athletic, artistic ability, or based upon your community service while you were in high school. Colleges will look favorably upon potential, depending on how well you did in high school, how you fared on your college board scores, and what your extracurricular activities were. So that's gift aid. The self-help aid would be funds that may have to be repaid or something that you earn while you're in college. In some cases, families may not have enough resources on their own and or grants or scholarships to cover their direct or indirect costs. So in some cases, it may be necessary to borrow monies. Now, I say that with a straight face because I and probably somebody that you know, even your parents, when they attended college or trade school, borrowed some money in order to obtain their degree or certificate. And it is well worth the investment. There are rules. Make sure you understand your rights and responsibilities if you were to undertake a loan, but just be aware that loans are available to students and in some cases parents if the parents choose to borrow on behalf of the student. That's one subcategory of self-help. The other one would be students working their way through college. In most cases, that would involve part-time employment on campus or in some cases off campus in administrative or academic departments within the college or university. And that's typically through the federal work study or institutional work study program. If you've been exploring college websites, hopefully you have, you may have come across something called a net price calculator. If you haven't, never heard of it, look for it. What is the NPC? It's generally a calculator before you receive your award letter from the financial aid office, which estimates how much assistance you might qualify for from grants and scholarships based upon the information that you provide. It's not a FAFSA, but it's sort of an estimator until you're ready to make that commitment to the college and ready to complete your FAFSA. But this will give you a general idea of how much it'll cost you out of pocket, excluding loans, in order to achieve that college education. And from there, your families can begin the discussion on how to make up the difference, if anything. I now want to talk about some of the federal programs, starting with grants. The most basic grant that you'll see at any college or university is the Pell Grant, and the maximum that you see on the screen is $7,395. It's not an all or nothing grant. The amount of Pell Grant can vary depending upon the family's strength or your ability to pay, but be advised for this current year, and we believe for the upcoming year, the maximum award will remain at $7,395. Another federal grant, SEOG, that's the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. That's typically awarded to students of the highest need. In other words, they qualify for the maximum Pell Grant. Some schools may offer a little bit than the 4,000 that you see posted on here. 4,000 is the maximum by law that schools can offer you. But what happens is schools receive a certain allotment of SEOG and work study funds from the federal government, and the school at their discretion awards as much SEOG monies to as many needy students as possible. So if they don't have enough monies to pay every needy student $4,000, so they may award a little bit less in case there are more needy students at their particular campus. Another grant you might see if there are any aspiring teachers is the Teach Grant, which awards a grant of up to $3,700 to students who, after they graduate, agree to teach in a high need field such as science, engineering, mathematics, certain foreign languages in certain low income communities. You wouldn't have to teach in those communities forever. You have to teach for a minimum of 4 years within 8 years after you graduate. And before you receive a Teach Grant, or when you accept a Teach offer, you'll actually have to sign an agreement, student, in order to receive that Teach Grant. So those are the federal grants. I now want to jump into the state grants. It might be a little hard for some of you to see because there's a lot of information going on here. That's all right, because I'm going to go through each of the state programs one by one, slide by slide. To qualify for the state grants, in general, you, the student, have to be a New Jersey resident, which I believe the majority, if not all of you are, and attending an eligible or participating institution in the state of New Jersey. So you wouldn't be able to transfer to NYU, MIT, Penn State, or anywhere else. It has to be within the good old Garden State. To qualify for the state programs, the student has to be a U.S. citizen, an eligible non-citizen, or what we call a dreamer. And I'll talk about some of those requirements a little later on. The student has to file a FAFSA, which I'll talk about. For dreamers, there'll be an alternative application, which I'll also talk about a little later on. As I mentioned before, you, the student, and the parent have to be residents of the Garden State. There's an enrollment requirement where the student has to be enrolled full-time. The exception would be if you, the student, are starting at the county college level, where those schools offer part-time tag awards. You don't have to be full-time, but you have to be enrolled at least half-time, which is typically 6 or more credits during the semester. And there are other programs where you don't have to be full-time, but you have to be enrolled at least half-time at the community college. But at four-year institutions, to qualify for tag and other programs, just remember you have to be a full-time student and demonstrate financial need based upon state parameters. And make sure, if I don't mention this later, you, the student, you file your FAFSA as early as possible, because there are going to be state deadlines, institutional deadlines, and federal deadlines. Whatever those 3 deadlines are, you want to aim for filing by the earliest date to ensure that you're being considered for the maximum amount of aid for which you qualify. TAG is the premier state program, and there are other state programs such as Educational Opportunity Fund, or EOF. Actually, EOF is not a financial aid program per se. They do offer financial assistance for students who qualify for the program, which should generally be students who demonstrate educational and economic disadvantage based upon their college enrollment, and that's usually determined during the college admissions process. If you, the student, are admitted to an EOF program, in addition to some funding from the state of New Jersey, there's also academic assistance from your campus's EOF program, which includes, but is not limited to, academic advisement, tutoring, referrals, or any other assistance to ensure that you complete your 2-year or 4-year degree in a timely manner. There's also the Governor's Urban Scholarship for students who are residents of certain municipalities within the state of New Jersey. I'm not sure if any of you actually live in any of these 33 municipalities, but if you know somebody and they're in the top 5% of their graduating class, they would be awarded a scholarship of up to $1,000 per year for up to 4 years. Irrespective of where you live, is the NJ STARS program. If you're not a stellar student, in other words, you're not in the top 5%, but you are in the top 15%, which is still pretty good. And again, if you start at the county college level, you may be eligible for NJ STARS Award, which awards full-time tuition for up to 5 full-time semesters at your local county college. To qualify for NJ STARS renewal, the student has to maintain at least a 3.0 grade point average on a scale of 4.0, be eligible for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th semester at your county college. If you receive NJ STARS at the county college, and then you graduate with at least a 3.25 and transfer to a 4-year institution in New Jersey, there's a program called NJ STARS 2, which will pay up to $2,500 for up to 2 years at your 4-year degree institution. And to qualify for NJ STARS 2, the family's income, as reported on the FAFSA, can be no higher than $250,000. Now, I should point out that the programs that I'm discussing this evening and the levels are based upon levels and authorized amounts for the current fiscal year and the current school year. The amounts and programs for the upcoming year when you enter college in fall 2026 have yet to be determined. If there are any changes, you'll be notified by your particular college or even the state of New Jersey if you're eligible for a state program. Another program, if you're starting at the vocational level, would be the NJ Gives program for women and minority students who are enrolled in county colleges or certain vocational schools and studying programs such as construction supervision or solar energy technology. And this awards up to $2,000 per year toward the cost of your enrollment at that particular county college or technical or vocational school. The income requirement for this program, family's income, would have to be no higher than $60,000. Another program? Yes, here's another program. Again, at the county college level, it's called the Community College Opportunity Grant, or CCOG, which we say among the financial aid community. This is a last dollar award, if you will, to students enrolled at a county college, a local county college, and the family's income as determined or reported on the FAFSA is $65,000 or less. To qualify for CCOG, you have to be enrolled a minimum of 6 credits, which is half time at the institution, and you have to be making satisfactory academic progress. And at the 4-year public institution, whether you're there since freshman year or you transfer, when you reach your junior year, again, if the family's income is $65,000 or less, there's a program called Garden State Guarantee. The guarantee is that during your junior and senior year for up to 4 semesters, the state of New Jersey will ensure that you would pay nothing in terms of tuition and fees. You might have to pay something for room and board if you live on campus, but for tuition and fees, as long as you file the FAFSA and meet the income requirements and you're enrolled full-time, you have to be full-time at the 4-year institution, and making SAP, you would qualify for GSG and CCOG. As I mentioned, these are last dollar awards. So if Pell and or TAG are not enough to cover your tuition and fees, CCOG and Garden State Guarantee would fill the gap. In some cases, institutions 4-year and 2-year have a 3+1 degree completion program, whereas during your 3rd year, if you transfer to a 4-year institution, you, the student, could be charged tuition at the county college level. If you've done your homework, you may have noticed that there's slight difference between the cost of tuition at the county college versus a 4-year public college, and an even greater difference between a public institution versus a 4-year public institution. But for bona fide 3+1 programs, you'd be charged the county college level during your 3rd year, and during the 4th year, it would revert to the tuition and fees set at that 4-year institution. Those are the free programs from the federal and state government. As I mentioned before, there are also loan programs, which you, the student, might be offered by virtue of you completing the FAFSA. A great part of the direct loan program, when you receive your award offers, is that typically with loans, there's a credit check, not so much with the federal direct subsidized or unsubsidized loan. Again, by you, the student, completing the FAFSA, you will automatically be offered at these loans at your participating institution once you're admitted and you receive your aid offer from the financial aid office. There is a limit to the amount of direct loan that you, the student, can receive based upon your grade level. For freshmen, that limit is $5,500 per year. Of that $5,500, up to $3,500 will be subsidized, meaning while you're in school and during your 6-month grace period, you're not responsible for paying any interest or any principal. You'd have to start repaying after you graduate or within 6 months afterward, but while you're in school, there's no interest. Interest is accrued, but Uncle Sam's paying the interest. If any part of your direct loan is unsubsidized, what that means is you don't have to pay any principal, student, but you would be charged interest even while you're enrolled in school. And you can either pay the interest every 3 months quarterly, or if you choose not to, then every quarter that interest that accrues is going to be added to your principal. And once you start repaying the loan, you'll be paying interest on the interest. So if you are able to make quarterly interest payments, that'll cost you a little bit less toward the end. And don't worry if you missed anything. I mean, one, there'll be a recording. And two, if you are offered a loan, student, and you decide to accept any part of it before you receive any loan proceeds, in other words, the college is going to have you complete an entrance counseling session. It's an online tutorial to make sure that you understand your rights and your responsibilities if you undertake this loan process. I mentioned earlier that parents, if they choose to, can borrow on the student's behalf. The federal program that's offered to parents, if you choose to do so, is the Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. The acronym is PLUS. That's a decision that the student and parent would have to make if it comes to that before you apply for a PLUS or a private loan, which I'll talk about. Make sure that you, the parent, you, the student, look at all resources available to you at the federal and state level and within your own community and within the college and university. If there is a balance, once it's time to pay your bill, if the amount is manageable, consider doing a payment plan as opposed to taking out a loan. If you know that's not manageable ahead of time, there are supplemental loans available. One, as I mentioned, is the PLUS loan if the parent decides to do so. There are also non-federal private loans where private lenders, including the state of New Jersey, offer loans to credit-worthy borrowers. Borrowers can be the student, could also be the parent. Now, if the student doesn't have good credit or any credit, or likewise for the parent, then that borrower can apply for a loan with an eligible cosigner, which could be a parent or other responsible adult. As I mentioned, New Jersey is one of the lenders. They offer a program called NJ Class. The amounts and the options vary depending upon how long you think it'll take you to repay the loan, whether it be 10, 15, or 20 years. If you're able to repay the loan, you think you're able to repay that loan within 10 years, the interest rate will be a little bit lower. If you know or you think you're going to need a little bit more time, that's fine. It'll be a slightly higher interest rate and slightly more that you have to pay toward the end. But that's a decision that you'll have to make when it comes time. And there are other lenders such as Sallie Mae, SunTrust, PNC Bank, which offer low interest loans to families. For information on that, check with your college's financial aid website, and they'll give you information on lenders that they deal with on a regular basis. It's not our job to tell you which one's the best. It's up to the family to explore these loan options, including NJ Class, decide which one has the best rates, terms, and repayment conditions. A pause for the moment. See, before I get into the application, see if there are one or two questions regarding the programs that I mentioned. If you don't have a question now, but you have one later, that's fine too. Plus, that'll give me a moment to take a little swig.
Say that.
I don't see any questions in the queue right now.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on to one of the main events, which is the application process. Students and parents, remember nothing else that we tell you this evening. I want you to remember a couple of websites, one of them being studentaid.gov, which has all the information about the federal programs and the FAFSA, which I'll talk about, plus so much more. And the second one I want you to remember is the third one, HESA.org, which has all the information regarding state programs. Tonight, I'm going to give you a summary, and you can go back and review the video. But again, review these websites for all of the information that you'll need regarding the programs. Now, as Mr. Sabino mentioned at the top of the hour, the FAFSA, which is generally available October 1st prior to you entering college, actually became available last week. The Department of Education, they typically open up the FAFSA in beta testing. Beta testing was so successful that the Department of Education decided to open it wide to everybody a few days ago. So if you wanted to tonight, you could begin the FAFSA process. But otherwise, in general, mark your calendars for October 1st of each year for you to complete the FAFSA. Oops, that's right. You don't complete the FAFSA once, students. You have to do this each and every year. So it's important that you mark your calendars. Before I get into the FAFSA, just want to mention that you may need to complete an additional application for institutional assistance, depending upon the institution. Typically at institutions in New England, which have large foundations or endowment monies, they use a slightly different methodology than the federal one to award institutional grants or scholarships through an application called the CSS Profile through the College Scholarship Service. Typically, your admissions or financial aid office will advertise or advise you which applications are required, whether it be the FAFSA and or this one. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but if you are required to do so, we encourage you to be considered for institutional grants and scholarships, which are measured different from the federal awards. This is a change from back when I was in college. Typically, there was a fee for anybody who completed the CSS profile, or back in the day, financial aid form. However, for families of incomes less than $100,000, the application fee is actually waived. Other than that, there's a nominal fee of $25 for the first application, and for each additional, this is incomplete, each additional college or scholarship program, you would pay an additional $16. Now, a little later on, I'm going to talk to you about or advise you to be aware of any scammers where people will tell you have to pay a certain amount in order to be considered for billions of dollars of unused scholarship money. Most legitimate scholarship searches will not charge you anything. Now, this is the exception. The CSS profile, they do offer legitimate scholarships or avenues for which you can apply for a scholarship. And it's okay if you make that $25 and or $16 payment. If you are required to complete the CSS profile, which is customized based upon the college you attend or the type of scholarship you apply for, you can apply online at cssprofile.collegeboard.org or speak to a customer service representative at 844-202-0524. And now on to the main event. Actually, before the main event, if you haven't done so already, students and parents, one thing we advise you to do before completing the FAFSA is apply for a studentaid.gov account. Used to be called FSA ID. What does that do? Well, by applying for the studentaid.gov account, you, the student, and you, the parent, would be able to log in and electronically sign your FAFSA or your portion of the FAFSA and give consent when I speak about the FAFSA. Another use for the studentaid.gov ID is if you, the student, or you, the parent, apply for a direct subsidized loan or plus loan, you would need to sign a master promissory note, and parents, you'd have to complete a separate application. You can do so by logging in with your studentaid.gov ID. For any parents who already have an FSA ID or for themselves, or if they apply for one for an older child who already completed college or previously attended college, in general, you can use that same studentaid.gov ID in order to contribute to your younger child's application. And if you've forgotten your ID or your password, you can go back to studentaid.gov to reset your password or search for your username. When it's time for you to complete the FAFSA, this is one of the changes. Typically, the student, you would log in, provide your information, and once you're finished, you would invite your parent contributor to complete their portion. In the past, when the student sent the invitation, you had to provide their email address, Social Security number, name, date of birth. Starting in 2627, you, the student, don't have to provide all that. To invite your parent, you do have to provide their email. It should be the same email that the parent used to apply for the studentaid.gov account. And when the parent receives the invite via email, or if their son or daughter tells them, you, the parent, can log in and provide your information and provide your consent. And once both the student and the parent have provided their information, then the fun begins. But first, I want to talk about the application process. So first of all, who needs an FSA ID? As I mentioned, both the student and the parent, you have to have separate IDs. Do both parents need to apply for a studentaid.gov account or need to provide consent on the application, the student's FAFSA? Not necessarily. If you live with both parents and they're married and they filed a joint tax return in 2024, then only one parent is required to log in, provide consent, and e-sign their portion of the FAFSA. On the other hand, if you, the student, live with both parents and they're not married, or otherwise they didn't file a joint tax return, they filed separately, in that case, you'd have to invite both of those parents, each of those parents, and they would each have to sign in separately with their separate studentaid.gov accounts and each separately provide consent and provide their information going forward. Now, I've been talking about parents. There may be different types of families where it's not always mom or dad and dad or mom and mom. If the student lives with an older sibling, aunt, uncle, grandparent, in other words, somebody who's not the student's biological or adoptive parent, under federal regulations, you, the student, are not allowed, or that person's not allowed to substitute their information for the parent. It has to be the natural or adoptive parent. That being said, if you, the student, are unable to provide your biological or adoptive parent's information because of unusual circumstances, I'm not going to speak about it in this forum, but contact your school's financial aid office or the college you're likely to attend, and they'll give you instructions on what you need to do in order to apply for financial aid. So I spoke about contributors, which would be the student and parents or parent. The first part would be the student completing their section. Now, this is something I want all the students on the call to remember. This is your application. While the parents will be contributing their part, you, the student, need to take ownership of the FAFSA and everything college related, including the college application process, because going forward, all the information regarding your eligibility, your admission to college is going to be addressed to you, not to the parents of. So make sure that you don't ignore any correspondence. In most cases, it's going to be email from the college or from the state of New Jersey. You can share the information with your parents, but all the information is going to go to you, the student, because by law, once you enroll in college, unlike in high school where your parents were the guardians or the keepers of your information, that responsibility reverts to the college student. Students can give permission for the parents to know their financial or academic information, but generally this is the student's information. And that's my lecture for this evening. Just remember, this is your application, students. As I said, the FAFSA for 2627 is available now, but generally by October 1st of the year prior to you applying for aid, that's when it's typically available. When you complete the FAFSA, the federal processor will send information to you and to the colleges and to the state of New Jersey to determine your eligibility, and they'll calculate a number called a student aid index, or SAI. That's not your bill, how much you have to pay. That's an estimate of how much the family might be able to contribute toward your college education. Colleges use that and states use that to determine your eligibility for Pell Grant and other need-based assistance. To apply for the FAFSA, you would apply at studentaid.gov. Yes, there is a paper application that you can download from the federal government, but Why not apply online? Like 99.5% of the student population. It's faster, secure. I mean, hopefully I should get you a faster and secure. So if you can, please complete the application. I don't know if I mentioned this before. If you, the parent, do not have a social security number, you can still apply for an FSA ID or studentaid.gov account. There'll be a separate verification or authentication process for those who do have a social security number, but for parents without SSNs, you can still apply for federal studentaid.gov account. Students, in order to complete the FAFSA, you do have to have a social security number. Remember that. And I'll talk about some of those requirements a little later. The FAFSA historically has been available both in English and in Spanish, paper and electronic. But starting a couple of years ago, that application became available in what's called the 11 most commonly spoken languages in the United States. So that include English, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, French, Creole, Cantonese, Korean, or whatever the remaining languages are. As I kind of mentioned before, eligibility or determination is based upon prior year income. So for the 26-27 school year, you, the student, you, the parent, will be providing income information from tax year 2024. Throughout the presentation, I've been speaking about providing consent because if you filed a tax return, or even if you didn't file a tax return for 2024, you, the parent, and you, the student, would need to provide consent in order to transfer information directly from the IRS or have the IRS determine if there is tax information. This is not a requirement. Actually, it is a requirement if you want to receive federal student aid. And if you choose not to provide consent, you'll be advised so, or you won't be awarded federal aid. So think of this as a required option or mandatory option. What you see on the screen is typically what you, the parent, and you, the student, will see when it comes to you providing consent as you're completing the FAFSA. Remember, even if you didn't file a tax return, including students, you need to provide consent in order to proceed or be considered for federal student aid. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, to complete the FAFSA, you, the student, have to have a valid social security number. That being said, if you, the student, don't have a number, but you're considered a dreamer, non-documented student, and you attended a New Jersey high school for a minimum of 3 years, you can still receive state aid. Under federal law, unfortunately, you're still not eligible for federal assistance, but you can apply for state assistance. Instead of the FAFSA, you'd complete what's called the New Jersey Alternative Financial Aid application. In addition to having a social security number to complete the FAFSA, the student has to be a citizen of the United States, meaning born here or naturalized, or what's called an eligible non-citizen, which includes permanent residents, refugees, parolees, or asylees. So again, dreamers, you wouldn't fall under that category, but you may be eligible to complete the New Jersey alternative application to be considered for TAG and other state assistance. And earlier I was talking about satisfactory academic progress. It's not on the screens. I don't think it's on the other screens, but in order for your financial aid to be renewed, students, after your first year, you have to be progressing at a certain rate in order to complete your program. Rate meaning your grade point average. You have to maintain a minimum of 2.0 to be considered for aid for the upcoming year. And there's also something called a completion rate or PACE, where you have to complete at least 66.67% of the credits that you attend. So if during your first year, students, you register for 30 credits, in order to receive aid for your second year, you have to complete a minimum or pass a minimum of 20 credits and again, maintain at least a 2.0 grade point average. And information regarding your school's financial aid SAP policies or satisfactory academic progress are available on the school's financial aid website. On this screen is a summary of what you, the parent, and you, the student, will see when you complete your sections of the FAFSA. For the student, it'll be your demographic information after you've logged in. You can send FAFSA information to up to 20 colleges or universities. You can search for the school by college code if you know it. If you don't, you can search for it by name and or state. Now, just remember, students, just by virtue of you listing 20 colleges and universities, that is not a substitute for the college application itself. You have to be admitted to the college, well, in order to receive an aid offer. That being said, if you haven't been admitted to the college of your choice or the colleges of your choice, you can still list the college. And what will happen is your application, your FAFSA information will be in suspense until you are admitted to that college. At that point, the financial aid office kicks in and reaches out to you regarding your aid application. As I mentioned before, both the student and the parent, you will need to provide consent as you're completing your section of the application. If there are any unusual circumstances, I mentioned before, for example, if the student is unable to provide parental information, natural or adoptive, you can indicate that at the FAFSA, but at the same time, you need to contact your school's financial aid office to find out what the next steps are. Also, as I mentioned, your eligibility is based upon information from a particular tax year. So for 26-27, the state and the college will be looking at information from tax year 2024. Now, things can happen between the time you file a tax return and now. For example, the parent or student may have lost their job, so their ability to pay may differ significantly than what's reflected on the tax return. There may have been a loss of employment, a loss of taxable or untaxed benefit. After the FAFSA was filed, there might have been a change in marital status of the parent. For example, you, the student, may have initially reported both parents' information, but after your FAFSA is filed, the parents may have divorced or separated, or one of your parents may have passed away. In a case like that, that's not on your FAFSA. You would need to contact your school's financial aid office to find out what options are. And typically, colleges can, based on their discretion or their professional judgment, reassess your eligibility based upon your current circumstances. So file the FAFSA as it is, and then again, based upon the change, contact your school's financial aid office for additional instructions. After your FAFSA is processed, as I said, the federal processor, U.S. Department of Education, will review the information and then send the information back to you, the student, in the form of a FAFSA submission summary. That same information is going to the college or colleges that you listed in the school section of the FAFSA. And based upon your admission status, your college will reach out to you, the student, to determine your eligibility, or if they need additional information, they'll reach out to you as well. Now, in addition to you and the colleges that you listed, your FAFSA information will go to the state of New Jersey, HISA, and they'll determine your eligibility for state assistance, assuming you listed at least one New Jersey institution in the college section. So, students, after the FAFSA is completed, you would then need to create an NJFAMS account. Parents don't have to be involved. It's only the students. You would go to njfams.hisa.org to create an account. You can create your own ID and password. The NJFAMS account is used for you, the student, to determine your eligibility for state assistance. When you log in, if the state needs additional information before they can determine your eligibility for TAG or other programs, there's a portal or there's a to-do list, which would be apparent or visible to you, the student, when you log in. You can upload the information on their secure portal. And then after the state reviews the information, they'll then determine your eligibility for state assistance. The college, on the other hand, they'll determine your eligibility for federal assistance, institutional assistance, and state assistance based upon what HISA tells them. I mentioned in some cases you may have to provide additional information to the state, one of them being You, the student, might be selected for verification by the state of New Jersey before they determine your eligibility. And similarly, you, the student, might be selected for federal verification. Now, the college, on behalf of the federal government, will reach out to you, the student, and request additional information if necessary. If information may include you providing information on an institutional form, information being listing the family members to make sure that number matches what you report on the FAFSA. If for some reason your tax information didn't transfer from the IRS, the college may reach out to you, the student, to ask for a copy of yours and or your parents' federal tax return from, in this case, tax year 2024. And again, the information is going to you, the student, not to mom or dad. So don't look to your left or to your right. Make sure you check your email in a timely manner for any correspondence from your college, chosen college or university, your preferred college or university, or the state of New Jersey. So if you see anything from HESAA, HESA, students, that is not spam. That's coming directly from the state of New Jersey, which means they're going to request information, or they may need additional information, or there may be an additional step that you'll have to take in order to receive state assistance. So make sure that you respond to those requests from the state and or the college or university in a timely manner. And if you have questions, contact the state or contact that particular college or university. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, New Jersey Dreamers, while you wouldn't be eligible to complete the FAFSA, you can complete the New Jersey alternative application. You do so by, you have to create an NJFAMS account at njfams.hesa.org. As I mentioned before, to qualify for state assistance, even if you're not a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, but you are deemed a dreamer, you have to have attended a New Jersey high school for a minimum of 3 years. Some of you may attended 4, but at the very least, you have to have attended at least 3 years. And probably when you apply for admission or during the admissions process, you, the student, would have to sign an affidavit indicating that while you are undocumented or you don't have citizenship yet, you or your family are working toward gaining a path towards citizenship. That's a requirement in order to be considered for state assistance if it comes to that. And if you do acquire citizenship or permanent residence after college, then at that point you may be able to apply for a FAFSA for that year or whenever you become a eligible non-citizen. But for now, this application is available, the New Jersey alternative application, for those who may not be eligible to complete a FAFSA. On this screen is a screenshot of what you, the student, can expect to see when you create your NJFAMS account and you log in. There's information regarding your tuition aid grant if you qualify. And if you've listed multiple New Jersey institutions, you'll see a tag amount for each institution, and the amounts are going to be different because tag is going to vary depending upon the tuition structure at that particular institution. You'll see typically at a county college that the tag amount is going to be significantly lower than at a 4-year public institution, and that's going to be even lower than at an independent institution. And within public institutions, you'll see some variances as well. Like you'll notice there'll be a difference between the tag amounts for Rutgers, NJIT, Montclair, Kane, Rowan, all these public institutions because they have slightly different tuition structures, even within the public system. So make sure you read that information. There's also information if you decide to apply for an NJ class loan. NJ Dreamers, you have your own tab in order to complete the New Jersey alternative application. So students, again, HESA is not spam. That's information regarding your eligibility for state assistance. And if you do have questions, contact not the federal aid hotline, but the New Jersey hotline, which I'll give you the phone number a little later on. This is a screenshot of what you, the student, can expect to see after you log in. If there is something on the to-do list, it'll be indicated or highlighted at this point. Take a quick pause. And that's the FAFSA. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about some other things that you, the student, you, the family, would need to know going forward. Cost of attendance, you can think of that as your budget. And that's nothing that you would need to create because your colleges construct a standard budget for all colleges based upon their grade level or enrollment status or even housing status. That's typically what a family can expect to pay for educational expenses at a college for a particular year or even a semester. And the cost can include, as you imagine, tuition and mandatory fees, housing and food if you plan to live on campus. Even if you don't plan to live on campus, there's a housing component for commuters as well, maybe a little smaller or a little bit bigger if you have your own apartment. There are also components for things that you're not billed for every semester, but typically you'd have to pay for. For example, books and supplies, those are not free. You'd have to pay for that separately. Typically, colleges have bookstores within their campus or nearby. There may be other costs in the standard or not. For example, if at any time you, the student, are fortunate enough to enroll in a study abroad program where you can study outside the country for a semester or a year, there'll be higher or different costs, and even there'll be higher transportation costs because in order to study in Europe, typically you would fly there. So you want to make sure you take in consideration the cost of the flight if it comes to that. So if your school does have some sort of study abroad program, typically they would know what those costs are and they would embed that into your regular cost of attendance. And there may be other expenses. For example, if you, the student, have a disability and there's some sort of expense that's not in your standard cost of attendance, for example, if there are costs related to you being transported to and from campus, contact your financial aid office to ensure that those costs are included within your total cost of attendance to make sure that you're awarded the maximum federal, state, and institutional assistance to which you may qualify. Earlier spoke about the SAI because cost of attendance can vary depending upon the type of institution or even the state where you're attending. One thing that won't change would be the SAI because that's going to be constant no matter which institution you attend. Give you an example, say the Smith family applies to three types of institutions and their student aid index is, in this example, $8,667. The amount of assistance or the amount of need-based assistance that the Smith family or the Smith student would receive will vary depending upon the type of institution. Now, as I mentioned earlier, community college tuition fees or costs are generally lower than their four-year counterparts. So there's not as much wiggle room at the community college. There may be some assistance from CCOG, as I mentioned before, even some institutional assistance, but not as much than a four-year institution where the costs are typically a little higher. And then if you've done comparisons between four-year public and four-year private institutions, you've probably noticed that there's a difference in tuition and fees even at that regard. So there's a little more wiggle room at the independent institution level. That being said, when you're applying to colleges, and I hope this gets across to everybody, don't be discouraged by the initial sticker price. Don't let that be a deterrent for you applying to that college if that's the one that has the program that you want to study. As long as you plan early and look into all the resources, you still be able to finance your education. There may be some borrowing involved. Otherwise, there may also be some institutional assistance. At private colleges and universities, they may have some foundation monies that you don't see as much of at the public count or public institution level. So apply early and find out what resources the institution has before you say, no, I can't apply, I can't afford this. You might be surprised at what the institution may offer based upon your financial need. I mentioned earlier, make sure you complete the FAFSA as early as possible. It's available now for the upcoming year, 2026. Again, mark your calendars for every October 1st prior to the next year because October 1st, 2026 6 is when the 27-28 FAFSA will be available. You're wondering, why am I talking about 27-28? That's more than a year from now. Time flies, and they'll be here sooner than you think. You don't want to miss out on all the federal, state, and institutional assistance for which you might qualify. By applying late, you could lose literally thousands of dollars of assistance, and you don't want to do that. So again, at this point, this is when hopefully you've already begun applying to the colleges or institutions. You can also begin completing the FAFSA and or the CSS profile if the school requires it. Typically, early in the next calendar year is when colleges begin awarding students or offering aid offers for the upcoming year to give families an idea of how much it'll cost to attend that particular college. And so you can make informed decisions on which institution you can attend or you would like to attend. So you can look for those awards typically in early 2026. But we still encourage you to complete the FAFSA now in case you're selected for verification or in case there are any issues or anything is missing, you have time to resolve those issues or make corrections if necessary. So if you've done everything early and you've received your aid offers by February, March, April, May, or even June, you'll have an idea of which school you want to attend, make that final decision, because sometime in the summer, prior to you attending the institution, you, the student, not the parents, you, the student, are going to receive a bill, usually by email, from that institution, which will summarize your direct costs, which would be your tuition and room and board if you plan to live on campus. That bill will typically subtract any financial aid for which you qualify, for example, grants, scholarships, and any accepted loans. Whatever the balance is, from there, the family would decide how to pay that, whether it be a supplemental loan plus a private or NJ class that I mentioned earlier, or if that balance is manageable, as opposed to taking out a loan, most colleges typically offer a payment plan where you can pay that balance within 3, 4, or 5 installments during the semester, as opposed to taking out a loan. So if that's an option, there might be a small nominal fee of maybe $40, but other than that, there's no interest accruing with a payment plan. So if you, the family, are eligible to enroll in a payment plan offered by the college, we encourage you to do so. And make sure you apply by the time the bill is due, or you've made arrangements to pay your semester balance by the bill due date, which is typically during the first or second week in August. And you want to make those arrangements or pay before the deadline. Otherwise, you could be assessed late fees, or even worse, you can be deregistered from your registered classes. You don't want to get that far. So make sure you plan ahead. So as far as where to go from here, again, hopefully students, you've already begun the college admission process and you've started exploring the institutions and you're narrowing your choices down. Make sure you're completing the financial aid applications as we described. And if you have questions, contact the state or contact the school's financial aid office, and make sure you adhere to the FAFSA deadlines if you're required to complete the FAFSA or the New Jersey alternative application. Your college, when they receive your financial aid information, assuming you've been admitted to that college, will send you an aid offer. In addition, you may receive something similar to what you're seeing on the screen, which is called a shopping sheet. It's also called a college financial planning offer, which will break down your costs, the average cost, depending upon the institution you're attending. There'll be a section for any gift aid, in other words, grants and scholarships for which you might qualify, and it'll give you a breakdown of what the difference is if your grants and scholarships are smaller than your direct costs. And from there, as I said a minute ago, you can decide or have those discussions with your college on what to do, whether to enroll in a payment plan when you receive your bill, or if you need to apply for a supplemental loan or accept a direct loan offer. That will be the time to do so. And again, if you have questions, contact the financial aid office. As I alluded to earlier, there are scholarship opportunities within the college or university or within your own community. So look for those opportunities, whether it be in person or on the World Wide Web, something that wasn't available to myself or maybe not even your parents when they enrolled in college or applied to college. But again, be careful because there are going to be scammers out there who want to take advantage of you or your parents when you're looking for opportunities. Unfortunately, there are some unsavory individuals who want to take advantage of your situation. So be very careful in that regard. As I mentioned before, there may be job opportunities where you, the student, can work part-time while you're going to school full-time. And there may be some opportunities where you don't receive a paycheck per se, but you may receive some sort of stipend or voucher. For example, if you live on campus and at some point you want to become a resident assistant where you assist students living within a residence hall, as compensation, you wouldn't receive a paycheck, but the college or university might pay your tuition fees or waive your not your tuition fees, your housing and meal costs while you're living on campus. Scholarship opportunities, I mentioned, are available online, and certainly you can also check with your high school's guidance office or within the local library. I believe they still have information, but if you are looking at the web, there are websites for which you may find scholarship opportunities. These are just a few: HISA.org, fastweb.com. Fastweb.com is actually a good one. This is actually a site which will link you to a scholarship committee for which you can apply for a scholarship. It's not an application for the scholarship. At some point, you, the student, will have to complete a separate scholarship application, write an essay if necessary, make sure you've provided a template at least. And based upon your college interest, academic program where you're attending or so forth, you may find yourself eligible for a scholarship for which you didn't think you qualified. So students, do your research, find out what's out there. And again, be careful of scammers. 529 plans. Again, your parents may have started a plan when you were younger and you weren't even aware. So that might be a nice surprise. Parents, if you have a younger child, if you know somebody who's going to become a parent very soon, encourage them to open up a plan. And also parents, something to think about in another 10 or 20 years, you'll become a grandparent. And one of the greatest gifts that you can give that grandparent is opening a college savings plan. It's not just limited to the parent. It could be grandparent or other interested individual. Now, we've given you some basic building blocks as far as applying for aid. If you need assistance in completing the applications, as I've said all evening, contact your college or university. Also be advised that many colleges offer FAFSA workshops in person or virtual for families who need assistance in completing the application. It could be a prospective or a returning student. Also, the state of New Jersey offers webinars in English and in Spanish for any families who need assistance in completing the FAFSA or the New Jersey alternative application. And I believe there are dates on the website. If you go to HISA.org, you can actually schedule an appointment or schedule one of the upcoming webinars, and the dates change throughout the year. Also on HISA.org is information regarding TAG, CCOG, GSG, and other state programs that I mentioned. They also provide steps on completing the application if you wanted to view their brochures or printed it, being old school, or just view the information online. All that information is available at HISA.org. And again, here's one of the two websites I wanted you to remember, HISA.org. These other websites beneath HISA.org are derivative from HISA.org if you want to go directly to the NJ Class portal or the NJ FAMS portal, but it all begins at HISA.org. Again, if you have questions, you can speak to a customer care representative or email them at outreach@hisa.org during their regular business hours. And many colleges and universities, they'll have customer care centers, whether it be the financial aid office or if they have a one-stop customer care center. You can contact them for any assistance or asking any general questions at this point. And that's the presentation. It lasts a little over an hour, and I see there's already a question. That's great. So, and your discretion, Mrs. Sabino, we'll open the floor to any questions that are in the chat or raised, however you want to do it.
That sounds great to me. I'm trying to find the best way to get this individual, that parent who raised their hand, to get them to ask their question. I think I could allow them their mic. So, parent, please feel free to ask your question. I believe now you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm good. First of all, thanks very much for the very helpful overview here. So appreciate that. Just a quick question. You mentioned them using the 2024 tax returns to determine aid for the 26-27 year.
Correct.
If you file an extension with an October 15th deadline, and assuming it takes a few weeks for that to get accepted by the federal government, should I wait and hold off on completing the FAFSA?
Good question. If you did file an extension for 2024 and the automatic extension, I believe expires October 15th, to your point. So if you do have to file an extension beyond October 15th, you, the student or the parent, can still complete the FAFSA. While your tax information won't be available, first, you still need to provide consent. And second, if your information is non-transferable because there's no information with the IRS, you, the tax filer, or the potential tax filer, can provide estimated tax information or income information. So we do encourage you to file the FAFSA as we described, but again, if you're not able to transfer the information, just estimate your income based upon your W-2s or other information, and also estimate your tax. And then when the school receives your information or the state receives your information, if you filed an actual tax return, at that point, if you haven't corrected the FAFSA, the student might be selected for verification at that point, which may be a few months from now, but definitely file the FAFSA now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, not seeing any other questions, I did want to say I think we promised everyone an informative presentation, and I know firsthand that just from listening to you tonight, you delivered on that. So many different takeaways. I always take notes from this presentation. One thing I just want to reiterate, I think you did a few times here, was students, and a lot of this are in the driver's seat as they're going to be college students themselves. So please make sure the students, you're part of this process. You're sitting with your parents every step of the way to become informed, as this, will be something that you'll be participating in. You'll be having to check your emails and your accounts, as mentioned, for follow-ups and updates throughout the process from NJ FAMS and from HESA. So just make sure you are just right out the gate here, so you're not missing any of the crucial deadlines and information you're going to receive to make this an educated process for you. Scammers are out there. We see them all the time. I get solicited. I'm sure you all do. Certainly, they're part of this process, unfortunately, as well. So just being mindful of legitimate sites. If you have any questions, I know Doug mentioned a number of times of reaching out to the colleges, but you could certainly, the counselors have all at this point seen, we know where the trusted sites are for the most part, and we could certainly help you validate something if you have questions about, the legitimacy of a site or information about a scholarship you may be receiving. Good opportunity to plug. We do have, you may know, a lot of local and memorial scholarships that we offer in the district, and there'll be a whole evening presentation and a whole process to apply for all the local scholarships as well in the spring, and with the recognition programs before students graduate. So more information to come out on that. And just really want to thank you for being on the call tonight, everyone. I think we had a great turnout. Thanks to Doug Wilson, Mr. Wilson here, for being here with all your knowledge. Your delivery, I think, was just great. You took the time with it, and immensely informative presentation. So we will make sure this is posted online Today is, I think it's Tuesday, so we'll be having this posted online before the end of the week, so you could all view it again, and you could pick up any key parts of this. Thanks everybody for being on the call tonight, and hope you have a good rest of your night. Thanks, Doug.